I'm Michelle, and this is another episode of Get Well with Michelle. Yay! Okay, so today's quote of the day is, "Every man is guilty of all the good he does not do," and that was by Voltaire. Okay, so for today's episode, I kind of just threw it together because I realized I hadn't posted a video in some time, and I just wanted to kind of talk about a couple things. Mostly like acceptance is a big thing in recovery. Um, a person that is dealing with a mental health or an eating disorder or addiction or alcoholism, anything, that they're dealing with, they need to really come to terms and accept that they are dealing with it. And only when you can truly accept that you're dealing with something is when you can start to get help and start the journey to get better. I had a horrible time trying to accept that I was dealing with, whatever, mental health, addiction, eating disorder, anything. I had a real hard time accepting that I had an issue with these. And I had a lot of difficulty trying to explain myself, like to my parents or, or a therapist or anything. I had a hard time telling them what, like I'll take depression, for example. Depression was a big thing I dealt with. I had a hard time explaining what depression looked like to me. And, for those of you out there who have a loved one that is dealing with someone who has a mental health struggle or addiction or whatever, you also have to come to a point of acceptance that, my loved one is dealing with this, and how can I help them? Because, it's really like, there's a huge stigma attached to, depression, mental health, eating disorders, addiction, whatever. There's a big stigma, and there shouldn't be. People should feel open, like they can talk to one another about what they're dealing with, because that just makes it, the stigma and the what is it called? and the stigma behind it, makes us not want to get help because there's shame involved. And there shouldn't be, it's just a disease. Addiction is a disease, eating disorders are a disease, mental health issues are a disease. And the only way we can fight it is to take our medicine, get our therapy. That's the medication. The therapy is the medication. Seeking help is the treatment. And trying to figure out what's behind the issue, because the eating disorders and the addictions, those are just how we cope with our issues, but we need to figure out what's behind the issue. Okay, so I'm kind of getting off on tangents a little bit here and there, but so forgive me. But so like I was saying, I had a very hard time trying to tell like my parents that I was dealing with something, and that was just because I didn't know exactly what I was dealing with. Yeah, I mean, the eating disorders and stuff were like, and the addiction, that's kind of hard, or that's kind of easy to diagnose, and it's hard to figure out why I was doing this, or, why I was depressed. And I remember like sitting late at night at the kitchen table with my parents, and I just, was sitting there completely quiet. I looked like I was calm, my eyes down, my hands crossed in my lap. I went like hours without saying something while my parents were screaming at me, "What is wrong?" My mom even tried to get me to like write it down, and like wrote on a piece of paper, "What is wrong? What's going on?" And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I didn't know how to describe it to them. So I do a lot of reading. Usually when I'm exercising, I read a lot. That way the time kind of goes by faster. And I found an excerpt in this book that I'm reading. It's called um, Believerexic by J.J. Johnson. And it's really great. It's a story about a girl who has an eating disorder and goes to a treatment center. And while I was reading, this page, she's sitting in a one-on-one session with her psychiatrist, and she's asked to kind of describe her depression. And she does such a great job describing her depression that I just wanted to share it with everyone. So I'm going to read from it. Okay, so it's like my friends, they think happiness is a bouquet of helium balloons. Picture everyone in the world, each holding a bunch of balloons on a string. Most people's balloons are plump and bouncy and they float really well. Some people's balloons might be droopy because they're sad or sick or something. So my friends think my balloons are saggy and they try to help. They say, "Here, have some helium. Let's get your balloons all floaty again." Because plump balloons indicate happiness. But the problem is, I'm not holding droopy balloons. I'm not holding any balloons at all. I'm standing there with strings that lead to nothing. So even if my friends gave me helium, tanks and tanks of helium, there's nothing to put it in. My balloons are just completely missing. So I thought, wow, that explains my depression to a T. And I never knew how to describe it. My best explanation was it was like trying to translate a foreign language I did not know. Like my brain was a foreign language and I didn't know the foreign language, and I was asked to explain my brain to them. And that was the best explanation I had for it, or best description I had for my depression. I really didn't know how to describe it, but this is a perfect example of clinical depression, or anhedonia, which is a loss of pleasure, because that's what depression really is. It's a loss of the pleasure you have in your life, that you lose interest in your daily activities, you lose interest in friends, you have literally a loss of pleasure. And I just thought that was brilliant. Okay, just a couple more things before I let this video end. The other day I was talking to my husband and I asked him, what is the most important thing that you learned while I was in rehab? Like during our family sessions. And he said to me that he needed to finally let my recovery be my recovery. He couldn't do it for me. I had to finally make the conscious decision that I wanted help, that I wanted to get better, that I wanted to live my life in sobriety or recovery from my eating disorder, that, I wanted to take my medicine, I wanted to get better. And he couldn't make that decision for me. I thought that was really insightful of him. I thought that was great. For those of us who are all, I hear the saying walking on eggshells a lot from loved ones who are dealing with, someone they love that's in recovery. And I always say to myself, well, you don't need to put yourself on the eggshells. If you have a question for someone who's in recovery, just ask. More than likely they'll be happy to tell you, what you need to know about their recovery. I just don't think we need to tread lightly around each other and just, be direct. I think that's the most, what is the word? The most authentic thing we can do for each other is just be direct with each other and tell them what they tell everybody what you need or what they need from you. Okay, so that's all I have today. Remember, if you're in crisis, please go to your local emergency room or call a suicide hotline, call a friend, call a counselor, just call someone. Don't keep it to yourself, let it out. Remember, I'm not a mental health care provider, and these are just my everyday musings and just things that I've noticed from my life, being someone who has dealt with these issues. And that's all I have. Okay, I will see y'all next time. All right, take care.